Captain Midnight.
This video is brought to you by Brilliant. There's been no shortage of Spider-Man cartoons. They've aired on different networks through the years, from ABC to MTV to Disney XD and more. They all really reflect when they were made too, so looking back on them almost functions like a crash course in the history of animation on television. So before I start, I want to say that in a way, I value all of these shows. But come on, we all know that some are a little or a lot better than others. So I'm gonna dig in and rank them from less than amazing to the absolute best.
How's that for a down payment?
Number 9, Spider-Man Unlimited. So I know this show has its fans and I'll probably take a little heat for this, but man, I do not like Spider-Man Unlimited. In it, Spider-Man hitches a ride into space where he finds himself on a planet in the middle of a civil war involving animal-humanoid hybrids. If you're listening to that and thinking, that doesn't really sound like Spider-Man, you'd be right. That's my main problem with this show. Everything that makes Spider-Man Spider-Man is stripped away, leaving us with a series set on an alien world that could feature literally any superhero as its lead. Most of the old cast from the 1994 series is gone, replaced with a bunch of goofy new characters that Fox probably expected to sell a lot of toys with. Well, that didn't really work out, and the show was cancelled before the first season even finished. I will say this for the show though, the animation was pretty slick for TV in 1999. Still, the fact that this doesn't even feel like Spider-Man to me lands it pretty firmly at the bottom of my list. Number 8, Spider-Man 1981. The 60s cartoon doesn't exactly hold up that well, but it's definitely more fun to go back and watch than this very boring early 80s update. It's not bad exactly, it's just totally uninspired. You can tell that the writers were really just cashing a paycheck, and the animation is pretty dull as well. Overall, there's just not that much to say about this one. As an introduction to Spider-Man and his world, it probably did a perfectly fine job for kids back then, but there's very little reason to go back to it now unless you want to be a total Spidey completist. Number 7, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. The second Spider-Man cartoon of 1981, and by far the more ambitious one, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends gets big points from me for being the first Spider-Man show to really dive into the larger Marvel universe. Now, it's not great storytelling by any means, but Amazing Friends was trying to do so much more than its companion solo show. In addition to introducing Iceman and Firestar as co-leads and as friends of Peter's from college, it also had episodes with Doctor Doom, the X-Men, and Captain America. It was even the first ever appearance of Wolverine on TV. Yeah, he has an Australian accent for some reason, but I mean, he's there.
How you doing? Want a piece of fruit?
Overall, Amazing Friends isn't a great show, but it's far more ambitious than the ones that came before it, and expanded the web-slingers world more than anyone had ever seen outside of comics. Plus, the episodes with the evil video arcade machine Video Master are pretty great.
Oh no!
Number 6, Spider-Man 1967. So this is a weird one, because I debated putting this show both at the bottom of the list or a little closer to the top. The thing is, it's not good, but I kind of love it. It's so goofy and cheap looking with storylines that feel totally hallucinatory at times. It was also my first introduction to the character. I remember watching it, I think on VHS at a daycare when I was like 4 or 5, and having my mind totally blown. Looking at it now, that's pretty hard to imagine. But still, it's the show that launched 1,000 memes for a reason. It is really funny to watch now. There's absolutely no internal logic to it half the time. Like, look at this. What is this? What am I looking at here? I have no idea, but whatever it is, I love it, stiff animation and all. Number 5, Ultimate Spider-Man. So I think that in my video about the newest Spider-Man show, I said that I liked Ultimate more, and I gotta say, going back and rewatching some episodes for this video, I was wrong. I kind of can't stand this show. Now don't get me wrong, it looks good, it's got some solid voice acting, and every once in a while it has some really decent joke writing. But, and keep in mind, this is coming from someone well outside of its target demographic, I just find it really annoying. Like, it gives me a headache. It's doing a very specific thing, and I guess it's doing that well, but that thing is just really not for me. Now, I've heard the later seasons improve, and I don't doubt that's true, but this version of Peter Parker just doesn't really feel like Peter Parker to me. Anyway, I'll move on from this one since I probably just sound like a cranky old man right now. Number 4, Marvel Spider-Man. So remember how I said that the 1981 show wasn't terrible, it was just kind of boring and uninspired? The most recent Spider-Man series kind of feels like that, but for the 2010s. Now, maybe that's kind of harsh. It's actually not bad these days. I think it's really improved over the course of its run. And it has a big advantage over the much older shows, in that while I don't love the animation, it is inarguably more fast and fluid, resulting in some pretty good action scenes. As the show has gone on, the character work has improved as well, to the point where I actually kind of like this show now. I don't ever see it cracking the top 3 spots, but I don't think it's a bad watch either. Number 3, Spider-Man the New Animated Series. 2003 was a weird time for Spider-Man. His first movie had just come out a year earlier and was a much bigger hit than anyone expected. And suddenly the character wasn't just an old icon, he'd become a new phenomenon. Which is probably why MTV, of all networks, was eager to scoop up a new animated show about his college adventures. Acting as both this weird quasi-sequel to the first Raimi movie and a very loose adaptation of the Ultimate comics, the result was a show that I don't think looks great today due to some very dated CG, but it was very solidly written. MTV was probably a bad match for Spidey since the show only lasted 1 season, but it did allow the writers to be much more mature than most Spider-Man cartoons could ever be. And that really paid off, as the show did a lot of great stuff with Peter, MJ, and Harry Osborn. It's really too bad that the animation looks like it does and that it only lasted 1 season, because otherwise I think this could have gone toe-to-toe with the best.
Old spider sense tells me he's over there. Out!
Number 2, Spider-Man the Animated Series. What can I say about this show that hasn't been said already? It's a classic, and especially at the time, it blew away all other Spider-Man adaptations with ease, with its long, winding story arcs and intense focus on Peter as a character. I think it's really only beaten by Batman's animated series as the best superhero cartoon of the 90s. These days, it is easy to see the cracks. The animation is very stiff by today's standards, and some of the voice acting can be unintentionally funny, but overall it still holds up as a pretty incredible version of the webhead. I think where the show really shined was with its villains, with its versions of Hobgoblin and Venom being almost the definitive versions of those characters in my mind. Like, when I picture Venom, to this day, it's kind of this Venom that I'm thinking of. I also love that it's not afraid to get really big and cosmic. Sure, the episodes could get clunky, but they always took really big swings. Also, this show has an amazing J. Jonah Jameson, maybe the best ever outside of J.K. Simmons. I could honestly talk about this show all day, but I'll try to move on to number 1, The Spectacular Spider-Man. You probably predicted this, because yeah, it is kind of predictable. But for me, this is just the best version of Spider-Man ever put on TV. So much care was put into the writing of this show that it takes it out of the realm of just being a good kids cartoon and makes it a great TV show, period. The dialogue is sharp, the plotting is perfectly paced. In its 2 short seasons, it's kind of hard for me to find anywhere where it really tripped up. The animation might not be all that much to look at when judging by screenshots, but it really shines in those action scenes, where all the money and time saved by the more simplistic designs really shows up on screen, giving us some of the most fast-paced and thrilling Spider-Man battles I've ever seen. It may not have lasted long, but in its short time in the air, I think it really earned the top spot on this list. One thing that's been really interesting to see across all these interpretations of Peter Parker, even in Spider-Man Unlimited, is how many of them retain the character's love of science and learning. Peter Parker may not be Tony Stark levels of insane genius, but I think his more grounded love of science is a lot more relatable, and maybe that's a big part of why I enjoy Brilliant so much. These last few weeks I've really been digging into the Science Essentials course. I'm gonna be honest, even though I love it, science was never one of my strongest suits in school. I was always more of an English guy. But that's exactly what makes this course so great. It makes science approachable and fun in equal parts. I've had Brilliant on as a sponsor a few times, and one thing that I always want to touch on is how they encourage a different way to learn. Instead of just memorizing rote formulas and having you solve problems with them over and over again, Brilliant is always surprising you, but never forcing you into boring repetition. So it actually makes it a really entertaining challenge in addition to being a great way to learn. And if you think you're a little bit beyond Science Essentials, don't worry, because there is a ton of courses on here to try out. So to support the channel and learn more about Brilliant, go to brilliant.org/midnight and sign up for free. Oh, and also, the first 200 people that go to that link will get 20% off the annual premium subscription. So I definitely encourage you to go over there and check out all the courses they have on offer.
Here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. You'd better hurry up and join at once, because there's a big adventure ahead. The thing to do now is to get started, because we're going to have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes.